discussed in some detail how a bidirectional payment channel works. And now we want to go to the full Lightning network where we have a network of people who want to pay each other and they have bidirectional payment channels among themselves. Okay, so let's talk about the full Lightning network. So we've studied how this bidirectional payment channel works. So if A and B want to pay each other multiple times, they want to make micro payments. So that is a term used in the literature. So payments of small amounts which don't make sense on the Bitcoin blockchain just because the transaction fees are too high. So here instead what we do is we withdraw some money. So A and B deposit some money in a funding transaction, and they also create these commitments in order to pay out from the funding transaction. So the commitments which they should send out are the ones which reflect the latest balance in the payments, right? And every time a payment happens, they sort of cancel the old commitments and create new ones. Yeah, and if there are ways to ensure that somebody doesn't cheat. So if somebody tries to broadcast an old commitment, he gets punished. And of course, if the other party just disappears due to some reason, it's not a problem because you can always broadcast your own commitment and get back your money. Right, so it's a clever idea, but it has just a bidirectional payment channel has some limited use because it's only good for A paying B or B paying A, right? They pay each other multiple times. But what if anybody wants to pay anybody else, right? Then what's going to happen, right? So this is not very useful for a global payment system. So one option of course is that let's say that there are lots of people D, E, F and so on. You can set up a payment channel with whoever you want to pay, right? So let's say you want to pay somebody in let's say Gulmohar Cafe at IIT, right? So maybe you set up a payment channel with them and you send them a little bit of money every time you go there and eat something, right? But what if you want to buy something from some other store somewhere in Mumbai, right? And you only go there once. Then it doesn't make sense to have a payment channel with that particular store, right? You don't want to have payment channels with everyone because remember that every time you have a payment channel, you have to have a funding transaction on the blockchain. Right, and for a single payment, it doesn't make sense to have a funding transaction and then a commitment and so on, right? Because that's worse than making a single payment on the blockchain. So what if we want to have a system where anybody can pay anybody else, and you don't want to have payment channels directly with everybody you might want to pay? So this is where the idea of a network comes in. And let's say that this is how the payment channel network is. Okay, and the first payment channel network to be proposed was the Lightning network for Bitcoin. That's what we've been discussing here. So let's say that there are these payment channels set up like this. So suppose D wants to make a payment to G. And let's put some amounts over here. Let's say that there is 2 Bitcoin here, 1 Bitcoin here. These are the amounts that they have pushed into this or locked into this particular payment channel. Right? Let's say there was 1 here, 2 here, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's say that here there was 1, let's say. Right, 6, 2, whatever it is. And suppose D wants to pay G. And let's say it wants to pay 0.1 Bitcoin. So how is it going to make this payment? Right? So what D could do, it could pay a little bit to A, and A pays a little bit to B, and B pays a little bit to G. Right? So they can pay 0.1 over this particular path. Okay, that is one option. The difficulty here is that D can only pay A. So the bidirectional payment channel is set up in such a way that D can ensure that A doesn't cheat, right? If D pays something to A or A pays something to D, the other party can't run away and sort of steal the other person's money. But how is D going to ensure that G gets this money? That's a very tricky thing, because if D pays A 0.1, A may refuse to pay 0.1 to B. Right? Or even if A pays 0.1 to B, B may not pay the 0.1 to G, because these payment channels are independent from each other. They are sort of like separate smart contracts which have been set up. Okay, so the problems that we might face: D pays 0.1 to A, but A does not pay G or does not pay B. This is one problem. Okay, and what about, so we could do it another way. So let's say that G, D and G communicate with A and B, and they say, that we want to make this payment of 0.1. And G tells B, okay, you pay me 0.1 and you can collect it from A, and A can collect 0.1 from D. Okay, so there's another option. So let's say that second option, B pays G 0.1, then then A pays B 0.1, and then D pays 0.1 to A. I mean, that's another way to do it if everybody was honest. But again, what if one of them refuses to pay, right? So let's say D at the end refuses to pay A. So G has got his 0.1, but A and B have not got their 0.1. Okay? So this is a problem. The bidirectional channel by itself doesn't solve this problem, because it only takes care of a smart contract between two individuals. Okay, so that's what we'll have to solve. We'll have to make sure that nobody's money can be stolen in this whole path-based payment method. Okay. But just before we go into those details, you might think, how does D find this path to G? Right? So D may just have one or two payment channels, maybe with A and D, and he goes, let's say, to a shop somewhere, right? And the shop owner is G, and so G says, you can use Lightning Network to pay me. So how does D find this path in the Lightning Network? Right? So there have to be some protocols for that too. It's like you have a network, and you have to sort of search in this network to find an appropriate path. And various protocols have been proposed for that, and normally you might want to choose a path where you have to pay the least amount of fees. Right? Okay, so we won't be talking much about fees in this course in the Lightning Network, but there has to be some incentive for people to participate with you. So in this example, I'm saying that D is paying G through A and B, right? And why should A and B cooperate, right? And so you have to give them some amount of fee in order to incentivize them to help out. So I mean, we could think what you want to do. You could send so D just has connections to A and E. so he doesn't have full information about the network. So maybe different people in different parts of the network, they might broadcast some information and say, B might say, I have a connection, I have a payment channel to F, and let's say the initial amounts deposited were 2 Bitcoin each by both parties, right? And this information has to be broadcast in the network so that everybody has an idea of the topology of this lightning network, and then they have to use some algorithm in order to find an appropriate path. Okay, so that itself is a research area, because there's a trade-off. If you have anonymity, you don't want to give out. You may not want to give out much information, and in those cases it becomes tricky. How do you find a good path and so on? So there are some trade-offs over there. But we won't be looking at those particular problems in this course. We just look at the fundamental problem of saying that suppose we have a path, then how are people going to ensure that the other parties don't cheat? Okay. So just before we go into those details, another point. Suppose D wanted to pay, let's say, 1 Bitcoin, let's say, to G. How many paths are possible? Okay, so we'll have to think. There is this path, right? So 1 Bitcoin can go here, right? But 1 Bitcoin could also, you think, go D, A, B, F, G. That may be another path, right? Or there may be other paths too, right? D, A, B, E, F, G may be another path. So there are lots of different paths over here. Suppose D wanted to pay 2 Bitcoin to G. Is there a path here? So just let's think about it. Suppose D wants to pay 2 Bitcoin to G. So is there a path? And D can certainly pay A 2 Bitcoins because there is 2 Bitcoins over here in this payment channel. But A will not be able to pay 2 Bitcoin to B using this payment channel because there is only one here. He can push 1 Bitcoin over here and then B will have 2. But he can't push more than that in this direction. Right? So every payment channel has a limitation. Okay, so the net amount you can push in a particular direction is the initial amount which you deposited. Okay. What about this way? So here in the first link itself you can't push 2 Bitcoins, right? So let's for a moment assume that we had, instead of 2 Bitcoin, let's say we had 3 Bitcoin over here. So could D pay 2 Bitcoins on this path? Okay, and we see that there's no problem pushing 2 Bitcoin here, 2 Bitcoin over here. But from F to G there's a problem because there is only 1 Bitcoin over here. Right? So that's going to be a problem. But suppose there had been a payment over here due to some reason. Let's say that 1 Bitcoin had been paid in this direction, because of which the balances became 2 and this became 4. Suppose this was the situation and now D wanted to pay 2 Bitcoins to G. Could he do it? And the answer is yes, because 2 Bitcoin can be pushed over here, 2 Bitcoin can be pushed here, and indeed 2 Bitcoin can be pushed over here, right? Because there is 2 remaining on this side of the payment channel. Right? And of course there would be many other ways to do it too. Even in the initial case, suppose we had 1 and 5. Okay, suppose somebody D wanted to pay 2 Bitcoin, then he could use path D, E, B, G. Right? Because every particular link on that path has at least 2 which can be pushed in the appropriate direction. Okay, So getting this to work is non-trivial. First of all, you have to find a path, and then you have to ensure that nobody can cheat along the path. So let's look at a situation. Let's say that let's say we want to make a payment over multiple bidirectional channels. So let's say we have a path like this. A, B, C, D. And let's say that they've initially deposited 0.5. And maybe there was 0.6, 0.7 here, 0.3, 0.2. And what we want A to be able to pay D, let's say 0.1. So we would want to update the balances along these paths. So this would become 0.4, 0.6. This would become 0.5, 0.8. This is going to become 0.2, 0.3. So once we've accomplished this, we've ensured that A has paid D 0.1. Okay. So how are we going to do this? So it's a little bit tricky because if A pays B, then B may refuse to pay on. So we have to be careful while making these payments, and we have to ensure that somebody's money is not lost if at all he makes a payment on one channel. So think about it, some party B, he's not really involved, he's not the person paying or the person receiving the money. So what does he want to happen? So he says, I'm willing to pay 0.1 here on this payment channel as long as I get 0.1 from here. That's all he cares about, right? So he's not going to be cheated if he ensures that whatever he pays is the same as what he receives. And of course, in practice, he'll have to receive a little bit more as an incentive for him, right? But we'll ignore those fees for the time being. So we are saying that if at all B makes a payment of 0.1 to C, and so his balance on this payment channel goes down from 0.6 to 0.5, it should go up over here, right? How is he going to ensure that? That's really what we want to ensure. So let's think about it. So as far as B is concerned, if he pushes out 0.1, he should also get 0.1 over here. So obviously if he first pushes out 0.1 and then he expects A to be honest, that's not going to work because A may not be honest. So what can he do? So what we're going to try to do is, essentially what we're going to ensure is that A first pledges 0.1 to B under certain conditions, okay, and B here, B is also going to pledge some amount to C. Okay. So this is implemented in the form of a smart contract, but essentially they are promising. So B says that I am going to promise you 0.1, he tells C, and A pledges 0.1 to B. So they haven't actually made the payment. There is a promise to pay, and this is done in such a way that if the conditions for this hold, okay, let's say under some particular condition, let's say some condition 2, okay, and this is under, let's say, condition 1. Okay. Under certain conditions, A says he pledges. So this is saying that if this, what I mean here is that if condition 1 is true, then B gets 0.1 from A. Okay, and similarly here, if condition 2 is true, then C is going to get 0.1 from B. That's what this smart contract is guaranteeing. Okay, so B is saying that I am pledging a certain amount to you, and if in the future this condition 2 becomes true, then you can take this 0.1. There is nothing stopping. But if condition 1 does not take place, then you don't get this 0.1. I retain it. Okay, so this is how the smart contract is going to be, right? And these two conditions have to be somehow connected to each other in some way, right? And of course, in the example given in the Lightning Network paper, essentially the condition is going to be same. Okay, but more advanced versions of it use different conditions for various reasons. Right? But basically, the point is that we are going to ensure that if condition 1 is going to be true only if condition 2 is true. That's what you want to ensure. Okay. So B says that okay, maybe condition 2 becomes true, and so B is forced to pay 0.1 to C. But because this condition is true, he also knows that condition 1 is true, and so he knows that he can get 0.1 from A. Okay, so these smart contracts are set up along the path, and then of course if A and D want to go through with the payment, they make sure that the conditions become true at all these different payments, these different bidirectional payment channels, so that C is forced to pay 0.1, B is forced to pay 0.1, A is forced to pay 0.1. Okay, so let's see how this is done. Let's look at the example in some more detail. So what we are going to do is, let's just look at the algo to do it, the protocol maybe I should say. So all on the path pledge 0.1 to the next person on the path. And here's the condition. On the condition that the next person can reveal a secret. Next person reveals a secret value R. Okay. And what is the secret value R? Well, that's really decided by A and D. Okay, so let's see how that's done. So we have A, B, C and D. Okay, so A tells B that I pledge to pay 0.1 if B shows let's say value corresponding to h of r. Okay, so this is a hash. So B doesn't know what R is, he's just given the hash of R. Right? So the R is some random number. Right? So B of course says okay, I mean I don't know what this R is, but I'm willing to agree that to that deal. Okay? And if at all B gets hold of R, he can take 0.1, right? That's how the smart contract is set up. But B doesn't know R, right? R is kept secret from B. And in the next step, B pledges 0.1 if C shows corresponding value of HRs. Okay, I mean by this value I mean the input of the hash which produces this value. Okay. So C2 would have to tell B, okay, this is the value of R, this is what R is, and that means B has to pay that amount. Okay. And step 3, again you pledge 0.1 just like before. Okay, so these are contracts enforceable on the blockchain. Okay, so now they've set it up, so nobody has actually paid anybody else. They've just said that they will pay if the other party reveals the secret. So the secret here is R, and all they know is h of R. They know the hash of that secret, right? But hash functions are one-way functions, so given the hash value, it's virtually impossible to go back and say what the input was, right? Provided there's enough randomness in the input. Now they are all ready, and each person knows, okay, that he cannot be cheated. So let's think about it. Why? How does B know that he is not going to be cheated? Okay? Because if C wants to take the money from B, he has to reveal the value of R, right? And B knows that if C reveals the value of R, he can still take the money from A, because he can reveal the same value R to A and he gets his point. So this ensures that B cannot be swindled, right? So if at all his money goes this way to C, he knows that he can pull money from A, because it's the same secret corresponding to both of these contracts. Okay? So now to actually make the payment, we'd have to go to step 4. Okay, so D reveals R, and D gets 0.1. Okay. That's how the contract would be set up, and we, of course, the actual implementation would have to take care of what if C runs away. What if D tells C, here is the value of R, but C runs away and says that I am not going to pay you, right? Then we have to have a method of forcing C to pay, right? Like we had when we talked just about a bidirectional payment channel, right? There has to be a mechanism for D to go to the blockchain and say that here is the evidence, I need my 0.1. Okay? So D could just close out the payment channel, for example, and collect his 0.1 appropriately. Right? So those details are there in the paper which I put on Moodle, but this is the basics of it. So D reveals R and he gets 0.1. Now C knows R, so step 5, C reveals R to B, I should say here C reveals R to C, and C gets 0.1 from B, and step 6 would be finally B reveals R to A, and it gets B gets 0.1 from A. So this is the basics of how you ensure that somebody doesn't get cheated along the path, right? So they don't actually make the payment. They say that if you reveal this secret to me, then I am going to pay you. But if you don't reveal it, then that's not a problem. I will get my money back, right? So there has to be some timeout over here on each of these smart contracts. You don't want to have your 0.1 Bitcoin locked up for a very long time, right? You don't want it to be locked up forever, right? So there should be a time limit over here, and V says that within this time limit, if you show me R, then you get 0.1. But if that time limit expires, then too bad, I'm going to take back my 0.1. Let's look at the details of how exactly to accomplish this. So what Poon and Dria propose is to use something called a hash time-locked contract. Time-locked contract. Okay, so like we said, there is a hash involved of some secret, and there is a time lock on it. You don't want to lock your money forever. So it's a contract embedded with HR, okay, and the amount is unlocked. So the amount in the contract, or I should say, is released on producing R. Okay. So the question is, how long are we going to lock this amount? Okay, so let's say what exactly this HTLC means. So let's look at an example. So A pledges 0.1 BTC to B till time tau, okay, with hash lock HFR. And in the paper, in the white paper on Lightning Network, they give tau in terms of days. But of course, should we actually stick to time in days? We could also do it in terms of number of blocks, right? So you could implement it in terms of number of blocks, and you can say that that after such, I'm willing to pay you provided you reveal before such and such a block number, right? That can be done. But just for convenience, in the paper they mentioned tau in terms of number of days. Okay, just because in the bidirectional payment channel we have used a number of blocks, right? We locked a certain amount of money, let's say for 1,000 blocks, right? So just to not confuse the two ideas where we are using similar ideas of locking, here they use days, right? Just to differentiate, they use number of blocks there and number of days here. But this too could be implemented in terms of number of blocks. Okay, so let's say that A has pledged 0.1 Bitcoin for 3 days, with this particular hash law. Okay, so what does it mean? So this means if B produces R before let's say tau expires, tau days expire, then B gets 0.1 BTC from A, and this is enforceable on the blockchain if A doesn't cooperate. Of course, if A cooperates, then they can just come up with a new commitment, right, which updates the balances and says that B gets another 0.1. But if A tries to run away, then B can actually go to the blockchain and enforce this contract and get his 0.1 Bitcoin. Okay. So B produces R before tau, then he gets 0.1. Right. Otherwise, A gets back his pledged 0.1. Okay, so A is actually temporarily locking 0.1 Bitcoin in a smart contract. It's temporarily locked for tau units of time, and if B doesn't produce that secret, then he gets back his 0.1. It's not locked forever. Okay. Okay, and you have to have safety built in, I mean, to ensure that if somebody tries to cheat, the other party can get his money back. So let's look at it. So let's look at the details of the steps. We've already gone through some of them, and let's look at it again in some detail. Steps for A paying D. So first of all, let's say suppose A wants to pay B, wants to pay D D wants to pay 0.1 to D, right? And A and D don't have a direct channel between them. Okay. So first of all, A and D, so normally it is the source who wants to pay. A and D find a path in the Lightning Network connecting them. Such that there is at least 0.1 along the path. Or maybe I should say 0.1 on all links along the path. So there is no point of A trying to go through B and C if B cannot pay 0.1 to C. Right? If there is not enough balance, if B doesn't have balance 0.1 between C, then there is no point trying to make that payment. So they first of all have to find a path which has enough capacity, you can say, enough amount which can be pushed across to make this payment. Okay. So the point is that if A wants to pay B, who pays C, who pays D, and let's say that this is the balance, let me just, let's say that the balances are A, B1, B2, C1, C2D. These are the balances. Then we have to ensure that B2 is greater than 0.1, C2 is greater than 0.1. Okay? And if the path was longer, we'd have to ensure that all particular links have at least 0.1 in balance to pay along the path. Next step, D generates R and shares H of R with A. Okay, so let's say A is going to buy something from a shop and the shop owner is D. So D just generates this R and takes a hash of it and gives it to A. Okay, so A doesn't know R at the moment. So A creates HTLC with B for 0.1 for time tau. Let's say, for example, tau is 3 days. And this is with hash lock HR. Okay, so A is not worried. I mean, he's just pledged a certain amount of money. He's not actually made the payment. Okay, and then what happens? So B also does not lose anything by entering into this contract because he's got a promise to get money. He's not made any promise to pay as yet. Okay, but now, of course, B creates HTLC with C for 0.1 for time. Let's call these tau 1 and tau 2 and so on. For tau 2, and we'll see that these taus have to decrease as we go along the path from A to D. Okay. And this is again with hash lock HR. Okay. And similarly, of course, C does the same, right? Okay, but let's for the moment think, why should tau 2 be less than tau 1? So we are saying that A has pledged 0.1 and B has pledged 0.1. And this is locked for tau 2, this is locked for tau 1. Okay. So if tau 2 was greater than tau 1, then there's going to be a problem, because then this contract could expire before this one. So what might happen if tau 2 is greater than tau 1, then let's say tau 1 is 2 days and tau 2 is 3 days. Then after 2 days have expired, C could reveal R and collect 0.1 from B, but this contract would have expired by then. So B would be forced to pay 0.1 and he would not receive 0.1 necessarily from A. Right? So we have to ensure that tau 2 is less than tau 1. Okay, so that if at all before this contract expires C pulls 0.1 from B, the B is ensured, B is guaranteed that this particular contract with A is still alive, and so he can pull 0.1 from A. Okay, so and then of course we have to continue that C creates HTLC with D for 0.1 with tau 3 is equal to, let's say, 1 day. Okay, with the hash lock HR. Right? Well, similarly, C knows that if D produces R before T3, then he can pull money from B because T3 is less than tau 2. Okay? So this contract should expire before this one. Okay. So now what happens after this? D produces R and gives it to C. Okay. So before tau 3 expires, I mean ideally it should be done immediately as soon as these smart contracts are set up. D tells C, okay, I'm showing you R, so you better pay me 0.1. And the way they would do that is that they would update their commitments to reflect this payment. Right? It's like making a payment of 0.1 on the payment channel. Okay? But if C tries to play hardball, he doesn't cooperate, then this contract is enforceable on the blockchain. D could directly go to the blockchain, put a transaction and collect his 0.1. Right? But we'll ignore those fine details of how to enforce it on the blockchain and so on. Let's say that they cooperate. So D shows R to C, and so C just updates the commitments with D to reflect this payment on the channel. Okay. And so D produces R and gives it to C. C gives R to B. Okay, and B gives R to A. Okay, and let's say all collect their money. Okay, so this is basically how the Lightning Network works. Initially, everybody sets up bidirectional payment channels with some parties, one or more parties, right? And when they want to pay somebody in the network, they first find a path in the network which has enough money to make the payment to the recipient. And then what they do is they have to contact everybody along the path. And then what they do is they set up these HTLCs. Okay, A first sets up an HTLC with B and so on, and all of them are locked with this hash lock. Right? And right now only D knows the value of R. Okay, D knows the value of R, and the rest of them just know H of R, and they set up these contracts. So once D wants to get the payment, right, he just reveals it to C, and C reveals it to B and so on, right? And each person who's revealing knows that the contract guarantees that he's going to get his money. Either the party cooperates and updates the commitments on the bidirectional payment channel to reflect this payment, or the party can actually go to the blockchain and enforce it by putting a transaction. Right, so the fine details of how that is actually implemented you can find in the white paper. We are not going to go into it, but essentially this HTLC is implemented as part of the commitment. So just like we had an RSMC in the commitment, you will have an RSMC, and in addition you will have an HTLC, which is part of the commitment, right? But what it implements is this, that if one of the parties produces R, he can take the money as long as the contract hasn't expired. But if the contract has expired, then there's no use in actually producing that particular secret. Okay, so how long would it take to make such a payment? Theoretically, it could take very little time, but normally what happens is, suppose A wants to pay D, they first have to find a path. That takes a little bit of time. Then they have to set up these HTLCs, then they have to reveal the secret, right? And it goes back along this, right? So you would expect that to take at least a few seconds. It's not instantaneous, okay, but that may be enough for most purposes, right? The practical situations are a little bit more tricky, because it turns out that in the real Lightning Network, people may not know the balances along these payment channels. They will know the initial amount because that is there in the funding transaction put on the blockchain, but they don't know the current balance. So what might happen in practice is that you try a particular path, and then you'll find that there is not enough money, and then A has to try to find another path to D, and that can cause a lot of delay, right? So the more anonymity, the more secrecy you have, and by secrecy I mean you don't reveal how much the current balances are and so on, the more difficult it becomes, and there are other problems that are created because of that secrecy that you have in the Lightning. Right, so this was the basic idea which Poon and Griya proposed, but it turns out that people have found certain security attacks possible here, because of which the current protocols are much more complicated than this.